Hello everyone. Back again with film recaps. In this video, I'm going to recap one of the thriller mystery films from 2025, titled A Widow's Game. Before we get to the storyline, I'd like to wish everyone a happy and great day. Without further ado, let's get straight to the storyline. The movie is based on true events. It opens with a couple arriving on their motorcycle and pulling into a garage to park. But just as they're about to leave the garage, they see something so terrifying that they scream in horror and bolt away from there. In the next scene, we meet a police officer named Eva, who receives a call from her colleague, Bernie, informing her that they've found a dead body. Soon, Eva arrives at the crime scene, and we learn that today's date is August 16, 2017. She then goes to the earlier garage, where a man's body has been discovered. The poor guy was brutally stabbed multiple times, and the cops are assuming it was a robbery gone wrong. Eva carefully analyzes the scene, and given the brutal nature of the crime, she's convinced this wasn't a robbery. One of the officers then reveals that the victim's name was Arturo Ferrer, who was 36 years old. Outside the crime scene, Eva meets a woman named Maya, who turns out to be Arturo's wife. The officer delivers the devastating news to Maya, leaving her visibly shaken and distraught. When asked when she last saw him, Maya says it was just last night. She explains that she came home from a night shift job and has been calling him all morning, but he never answered. The poor widow breaks down in tears, so Eva tells the man who seems to be her friend to send Maya to the police station once she calms down. After some time, Eva meets with the forensic expert, who reveals there were 6 stab wounds, 4 to the chest, and 2 directly to the heart. The expert explains that Arturo couldn't even react or fight back, suggesting the killer was an incredibly strong man. Eva concludes that the viciousness of the crime was not random, but rather the result of pure personal rage. When Eva returns to the station, she finds that Maya is waiting for her. Eva finds it odd that Maya seems pretty composed, and busy with her phone, while Bernie sighs and says that this is just the way the younger generation is. Eva proceeds to interrogate her, and Maya explains how her friend, Sonia, mentioned one of Arturo's co-workers, whom she met at the gym. Apparently, this co-worker was overly interested in Arturo, and Maya indirectly implies they might have been having an affair. Maya also reveals that Sonia is currently in the waiting room. Later, Eva speaks with Sonia, who claims that the co-worker only had a crush on Arturo and nothing more. She also reveals how controlling Arturo was toward Maya, and she had to pretend to work extra shifts just to hang out with her friends. Sonia admits she never knew Arturo personally, and everything she knows comes from what Maya told her. Here, Sonia unintentionally mentions that Maya has another man in her life, Daniel, with whom she is very close. Eva realizes that this points to an affair, and later orders her team to investigate Daniel. Later, she discusses the situation with her team, and learns that Maya will be receiving a widow's pension of around €1,000 per month, which makes her suspicious. But since the forensic report confirmed the killer was a man, Eva suspects that the murderer must be Maya's lover. The scene then shifts to the day of Arturo's funeral, where Eva shows up, and watches as Maya tearfully delivers a speech. Just then, Eva gets a call from Bernie, who informs her that Maya lied about working the night shift when the incident happened. In the next scene, Eva arrives at Maya's parents' house to meet the grieving widow. The two women talk privately, and Maya admits she's been having an affair with Daniel, but didn't mention it earlier, because she didn't see how it was relevant to the murder. She also reveals she had an affair with another man named Andre a month before the wedding, which Arturo and their entire family found out about. Everyone stopped talking to her back then, but Arturo eventually forgave her. Maya pleads with Eva not to tell anyone about Daniel, fearing that Arturo's family would kill her this time. Eva also doesn't judge her, and figures out that Maya lied about the night shift because she was with her damn lover. Regardless, the officer remains suspicious, and approaches her boss to request tapping Maya's phone calls. The boss agrees, and Eva's team begins actively monitoring Maya's conversations. They hear countless calls, where it's surprisingly revealed that Maya pretends to still be grieving and distraught with her family, while happily chatting and laughing with multiple men. She doesn't miss her husband and feels no sadness for his death. Moreover, Maya appears particularly close to Daniel, and even confides in her mother about her intimate encounters with him. After 37 days of the murder, Maye finally admits to Daniel that she's married, but her husband was mysteriously murdered just weeks ago. The news devastates Daniel, who wonders how she could deceive him when they were already searching for an apartment together. One day, Eva's life takes a dark turn when her colleague, Bernie, is accidentally killed in a violent encounter with a criminal. The news shatters her to the core, as they had been work partners for years and were incredibly close. To make matters worse, the chief commissioner informs Eva that Maye's case is being pulled from the homicide unit and handed over to the organized crime division. Eva tries to protest, but the commissioner refuses to change his mind. 2 months later, Eva gets a call from her team member, who is still tapping Maye's phone calls despite the commissioner's orders. It turns out they have a major lead, as Maye is talking to a new guy named Salva about the incident. Both sound very nervous, and Salva tells her he spoke to his police friend, which immediately sends Maye into panic mode. The scene then cuts to a flashback of September 2016, 1 year before the murder. We see Maye and Arturo's wedding. The couple is very excited, but Arturo's family seems unhappy, and wonders how he could forgive such a cheater. As their marriage unfolds, we see that Arturo is genuinely sweet to her, but Maye seems very distant and unhappy. She works as a nurse at multiple places, which is clearly wearing her down mentally. During this time, we learn that she's having an affair with her coworker, who was comforting her when Arturo died. One evening, we see Maye and Sonia at a club, drinking and having fun. Maye suddenly puts on a sad face, as she tells Sonia about how controlling and physically violent her husband is. After pouring out her fake troubles, Maye claims she must head for home and bids her friend goodbye. But in reality, we see her arriving at another lover, Andre's house, where they end up getting intimate. Days later, Maye attends a party, where she comes across Daniel, and ends up spending an intimate night with him. They seem to have a strong attraction toward each other, so unlike with her other lovers, Maye decides not to tell him about her marital status. In the following days, the relationship between Daniel and Maye begins to grow even closer, as they spend a lot of time together. One evening, at home, Arturo expresses his frustration that his wife is always at work, making it difficult to even see her. Just then, Maye gets a text from Daniel, which is accidentally seen by Arturo. He demands to know who it is, but Maye accuses him of snooping into her private stuff. She snatches the phone from him, but Arturo understands what's going on, and angrily asks her to get out of the house. He also demands a divorce, and this enrages Maye so much that she physically assaults him before storming off. When she arrives at the hospital, the crazy woman texts Andre, claiming that her husband violently abuses her and she can't take it anymore. She indirectly tries to ask him to get rid of Arturo, but to her disappointment, Andre appears sensible and tells her to report it to the police, and says he will support her. In the next scene, we surprisingly meet her other lover, Salva, who is a much older man and her co-worker. They spend some time together, and Maye breaks down, complaining about how violent her husband is, and how she is seriously considering unaliving herself. The man tries to comfort her, and Maye says she wishes her husband was dead. She then begs Salva to do it for her, insisting that with Arturo gone, nothing would stand between them, but the old man is horrified by such a scary request, and doesn't respond. The scene then cuts to 1 month before the murder, when Maye approaches Salva at work, and wonders why he hasn't contacted her in a month. She then reveals that her husband is out of town tonight, and invites him over to her house, to which the old man excitedly agrees. That evening, after having some fun, Maye begins manipulating Salva, and reveals how Arturo is becoming increasingly violent. He suggests getting a divorce, but she angrily tells him her husband won't allow it, and accuses Salva of not truly loving her. Here, the old man assures her that he does, and finally agrees to do anything she says so they can be together. Afterwards, Maye takes him to the garage, and carefully explains what time her husband usually leaves for work, and where he normally parks his car. She also hands Salva a copy of the garage remote, instructing him to hide inside and wait for the right moment to attack. A few days later, we see Salva at his home spending some time with his wife and teenage son, where he suddenly gets a call from Maye. She speaks affectionately to him, before telling him about the perfect day to commit the deed, 16th of August. Salva's face tightens with hesitation, but she manages to convince him, while emphasizing that she loves him and wants them to be together forever. In the next scene, we see Salva riding his motorcycle, and heading toward Arturo's building. He then nervously opens the garage door using the key Maya gave him. Salva notices a few neighbors coming in, but manages to hide until they leave. Not long after, Arturo finally arrives at the garage, and Salva doesn't waste any time in attacking him with a knife. After successfully committing the murder, he immediately leaves, and gets rid of all the evidence. He then informs Maya of the news, and she tells him to meet her later, which Salva is very excited about. When Salva arrives to see Maya, he tries to get close, but she distances herself and pretends to be deeply distraught over her husband's death. She warns him that they must keep their distance, because the police are actively investigating, and she doesn't want any connection between them to be discovered. Salva agrees and hands her a prepaid phone to use if she needs to contact him secretly. After he leaves, Maya immediately drops the grieving widow act, and texts Daniel to meet that night to have fun. The scene then cuts to 2 months later, when Salva approaches Maya at work, but she acts distant and cold. She claims that she's stressed because of her husband's insurance paperwork, and her messy home. Upon hearing this, he immediately heads to her apartment, where he begins cleaning and doing chores. At one point, Salva opens her laptop to get information about the insurance, but is shocked to discover her intimate texts with Daniel, as well as the fact that they are planning a trip to Italy. This revelation hits the old man hard, and he realizes he's just being used and decides to leave her alone for good. A few days later, Maya calls Salva from her regular phone, and asks what's wrong, and if she did something to upset him. He tells her maybe they should take a break from each other, because every time she sees him, she's reminded of the terrible event. However, Maya claims that she'd already forgotten about the incident, until he just brought it up. Salva then reveals that he reached out to his police friend, which sends a wave of panic through her. In the present, Eva's team is listening closely, as Salva explains he only asked his police friend for an update on the case, and they got Andre's name. He reveals they also found out about someone named Daniel, and their upcoming trip to Italy. This clearly worries Maya, and she admits that she's dating Daniel because she feels alone, while Salva has his family and kids. She then nervously invites him to meet in person to discuss everything, and the old man agrees. But unbeknownst to them, the cops are listening to everything, and they also plan to head there. Sometime later, Maya and Salva meet at a restaurant, and the police keep a close watch on them. But they can't arrest them until they have proper evidence, so they just take pictures of the two for now. Later, Eva approaches her boss and shows him the pictures, as well as the transcript of their phone conversation. She claims they're getting close, so her boss finally gives her permission to take further action. Elsewhere, Maya seems to be getting serious with Daniel and arrives for apartment hunting with him. Afterward, Arturo's brother calls Eva, and asks if there's any update on the investigation. She tells him that they're very close to catching the culprit, but asks him not to share this information with anyone except the family. Later, Maya arrives at Arturo's parents' house, and reveals that she wants to sell her apartment and split the proceeds. However, Arturo's brother firmly states that they can't allow the sale until the investigation is complete. Maya claims that it might take years, but he tells her that the cops already have the culprit's name and are close to catching him. The news sends Maya into panic mode, and she later calls Salva to inform him about it. However, he reassures her that no one is investigating him, and maybe they have another suspect in their hands. He tells her to relax, and adds that he hopes she has a better life now with Daniel. Maya admits she still thinks about him, and they agree to meet at a certain place in a few days. Upon hearing this, the cunning officers decide to plant a hidden microphone inside a napkin at the restaurant to record their conversation. In the following scene, the meeting takes place with the cops listening to everything carefully. Maya asks Salva about the key, but he assures her he took care of it and tells her not to worry. Afterward, Eva meets with her boss, and claims they now have enough evidence to make an arrest. The boss grants permission, after which Eva and her partner begin searching for Salva all over the city. His last phone call's location shows he's in the hospital, but they can't find him there. They conclude that someone must have tipped him off, and he has fled, but they eventually find him eating lunch in the hospital cafeteria. And so, the officers proceed to arrest him, and Salva calmly gives up, as if he'd been prepared for this moment. On the other hand, Maya is also arrested outside the apartment she's been sharing with Daniel. She looks utterly shocked, while Daniel is confused about what the hell is going on. The scene then cuts to the police station, where both culprits are interrogated separately. Salva tries to act tough and denies everything, while Maya pretends to be a grieving widow and cries. When Salva realizes they have all the evidence, he finally confesses to the crime, yet insists Maya had nothing to do with it. He claims she gave him the garage key a while ago in case he needed parking. Maya, on the other hand, throws him under the bus, saying Salva is a dangerous man, who got obsessed with her, and probably killed her husband. When Eva brings up proof of their affair, Maya claims she only let him go down on her sometimes because she was scared. Meanwhile, Salva still insists he acted alone, and did everything to protect Maya from the abuse. But Eva reveals that Arturo never abused her, and that everything was a twisted lie to manipulate him, which shocks Salva. Eva claims he could have gone through his midlife crisis by doing something else, but no, he had to be a pathetic simp, and drag lifelong shame onto his poor wife and son. In the end, both Salva and Maya are sentenced to prison, and the case is finally closed. After the incident, Eva resigns from the crime investigation team and transfers to regular police patrol. It is then revealed that Maya and Salva exchange love letters during their first month in prison. However, when Salva discovers she's having affairs with other inmates, he requests to change his statement and confesses the full truth during the trial. Salva is initially sentenced to 17 years in prison, while Maya receives 22 years. However, his sentence is later reduced due to his cooperation with authorities, while hers is increased because of her relationship with the victim. Okay guys, thanks for watching. See you again in the next video.